What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you a discussion video. Why are these AAA games so disappointing? Now, I want to mention that I said disappointing, not bad. With the recent release of Cyberpunk 2077 and it failing to meet people's expectations, it reminded me oftentimes that basically a ton of AAA RPGs are always like that, where they come out, it's not what people expected. There's a ton of backlash about it not being that great. Some people enjoy it for what it is, and there's kind of this back and forth, and it happens constantly. So today I kind of want to just have a discussion about why that is. So first of all, I think we need to talk about expectations. Again, using Cyberpunk as the example. When a game is marketed a certain way, obviously people are going to expect certain things. Go back and watch any of the trailers for Cyberpunk 2077, and they might as well be talking about a different game. Now, that's not to say Cyberpunk is bad, because it's not. It's actually a pretty solid game. It's just that it's simply not what it was marketed to be. There are no impactful choices, and a ton of those trailers are practically gushing about how every mission is going to have all these different branching options, and it's going to lead to other missions, and that's just not true. You can sit and watch these interviews where people talk about it, and that stuff just isn't true. So basically, in the case of Cyberpunk, and honestly something that I think echoes throughout the industry, especially the AAAs, not so much other games, but I'll get into that in a minute, but AAAs specifically, is that they seem to hype up this marketing as a game nears its release especially, and it's almost like they're talking about a separate game entirely. Now, why do I think that is? Personally, I think in the AAA space, it's actually pretty obvious. AAA games take tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions, to make. And as the process of making those games drags on, publishers tend to start pushing for, things like releasing before the game is ready, features having to be cut, things like that, as well as just straight up regular old development difficulties. And I think you see those things combine and ultimately wind up shipping a game that just isn't what was advertised. Now you compare that to, say, the AA space, where those developers are oftentimes self-publishing. They don't have to work with a publisher at all, and they can oftentimes talk to the community more directly as a result. They're not trying to keep things under wraps. This is actually what I love about Kickstarter projects, because as long as you get a decent Kickstarter project, pretty much what they're trying to do is laid out bare, and you can actually kind of go over it so you know what you're getting into. And that's why I think that you see this way less with AA RPGs, especially when you consider that oftentimes AA RPGs simply don't have the sheer amount of hype and marketing behind them as, say, a AAA RPG does, and thus can't build those expectations that then fail to meet people's reality. Pretty much sums up how I personally feel about it, and I am curious to hear about how other people feel about it, but there is something else I want to talk about that kind of hit me recently, and it's not even a super specific thing. I just remember somebody talking about Fallout 4. And I don't know, Fallout 4 has been on my mind a lot. I know, I've mentioned it several times here lately. But I heard somebody talking about it, and they were speaking about that developer interview. I forget exactly what it was, but it was the guy who actually wrote the Dark Brotherhood questline for Oblivion. I cannot remember the guy's name. But he's at this developer conference where he's kind of detailing how they laid out Fallout 4's dialogue system. And essentially, the dialogue system that everyone hated because it was so simple, it didn't make a difference at all to the conversation, things like that. And it hit me right then. It's that it's just so disappointing that you have these beloved franchises who get all this money behind them, and that, rather than use that money to do something crazy like, write the dialogue, they choose to cut portions out of a game so they can ship it faster and focus on that AAA part of it. That's especially true for Fallout, and I think that's an easy one to point out because that franchise is historically a pretty deep RPG, especially the first and the second ones, which were CRPGs. And even Fallout 3 and New Vegas had all of these dialogue options, and especially New Vegas. Ask anybody what the best Fallout game is, they're probably going to tell you New Vegas. And if you look at the sheer amount of options and things, especially when it comes to dialogue and whatnot, compared to a game like Fallout 4, it's disappointing because Fallout 4 had all this money behind it and all of these resources. And the fact that you can't get a decent RPG out of a game like that, despite all this AAA publishing, I think that's kind of the other half of the coin when it comes to why these games are so disappointing. It's because they get all of these resources, and rather than use them, they like basically cut out the heart of what the franchise was to begin with and kind of just sell the most appealing things. Now, I get from a financial perspective why that is. They are risking, let's be honest, tens of millions to hundreds of millions of dollars to put this game out. So it's not like I don't understand why they choose to cut the risky factors for a mainstream audience out, but when you're cutting the heart of a franchise that made that franchise what it is, like, why are you even bothering to make this franchise? Just pick a different game. Stop disappointing these people. It just drives me crazy. Especially because a lot of these AAA games are barely even an RPG anymore. There are no choices. The dialogue is, like, one-sided at best. And then you play a game like a CRPG, which is like my chosen genre, and even some of the most bare-bone ones do it so much better, it's ridiculous. Like, go play Planescape Torment, and then go talk to me about building a character. And that's actually my favorite example for this, is in Planescape Torment, you play as a set character, but you get to define who that character is. And just by that, it has more RPG than most AAA games release with now, and it drives me crazy. Again, I do want to circle back and say that I'm not saying these games are bad. I guess more than anything, I'm saying that if these publishing companies would market these games as what they actually are, I think a lot more people would be happy with what they are buying because they would know what they're buying. But let's be real, publishing companies aren't going to do that because they're trying to appeal to as many people as they possibly can so they can sell as many copies as they can. So telling them to say, you know, be honest about the game and thus hinder potential sales from a particular niche demographic just isn't something they're going to do. But I hate it. And honestly, I just wanted to rant about it into a microphone to you guys. So there's this discussion video. I just think all of these AAA games are just so disappointing. They have all this money and all these resources, and they can't even best games that came out 10 years ago in terms of what an RPG could be, and it drives me up a wall. There you go, guys. Rant over. Again, I'd actually love to hear what you guys think about this down in the comment section below. But either way, thank you so much for watching, especially if you made it this far. I probably wouldn't have listened to me rant this long either. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.